All right, and typically we wait a couple minutes here until we get a couple viewers and a little eyeball pops up on the upper left-hand side of the screen.
That happens.
Right, exactly.
My wife is at book club, so she won't be watching.
Okay, yeah, let's see here. So, and if it, well, it's good. And if it doesn't happen, we got people on here, so it's good. But here's the great thing is that this can be viewed into perpetuity. So, you know.
I hope that's good.
Yeah. All right. So, hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This episode of Your Future Mayor. I'm Steve Shriver. Today I'm a community journalist. I'm a local entrepreneur and one of Cedar Rapids' biggest cheerleaders. And I just love this town and want to see us end up at the polls very well educated. I chose to do this series for that purpose, my own curiosity and getting to know future mayors and or the future mayor and all the candidates. And also because we have 8 people running for mayor and a lot of them you haven't heard of. We've got, I'll name them off so we can get familiar with their names, but we've got Brad Hart, Gary Hensman, Chris Julich, Monica Vernon, Scott Olson, Tim Pridgeon, Jarrell Robinson, and Lemmy Tullahoon. And we need to get to know these people before we end up at the polls, and so we can make an educated vote. Got to plug my graphic designer buddy, Russ Bagel. Thank you for doing the logo in Here from Your Future Mayor. And what else do I have on my notes here? If you think of it, I think you can share this right now that you're viewing this. So if you can click share, let your friends know that you're watching, or share the video after we're done, that'd be great. So let's get into this here. Today we have Brad Hart. He is from Burlington, Iowa, and in 1990 he started with Bradley and Riley, a local law firm. Thank you. I need help here. And so he's been working at Bradley and Riley as a lawyer since 1990. In 2016, he was the Lawyer of the Year in Cedar Rapids, and he's also has a long list of community awards. The one I'll mention is a pretty big deal. It's called it's the 5-Season Citizenship Award. So, Brad Hart, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Steve.
And Brad and I are going to have a heart-to-heart here. So, get it? All right. We'll jump right into these questions. So, all the questions that I'm going to ask you were submitted by people on Facebook. I put it out there, and we, I tried to pick some questions that covered the gamut of social issues in town here. So the first one is pretty important, and this one is you might take some time to think about this. But what do you get on your pizza?
I would, especially if I'm hungry, I'll eat anything. I might pick off the sauerkraut. And if I only get one topping, it's pepperoni. Okay,
pepperoni pizza. All right, and this one, a little more serious. We have a growing fashion movement in the corridor, and so what? Who are you wearing?
If I was wearing someone, I wouldn't know who it is.
Okay.
My wife would tell me, I am no fashion hound. I think this outfit she bought me for Christmas a couple years ago. And I have no idea where she got it.
All right. Okay. That's a fair answer. All right. So now we're going to get into the little more of the nitty gritty here, Brad. What is the role of government in economic development? What are your views on TIF? You know what? I got to back up. I need to know about your household growing up. Sorry, I missed that question. Where'd you, what was it like?
I was born and raised in Burlington, Rivertown. I have an older sister, Lorna, who's in Charlotte, North Carolina, and a younger brother, John, who's back in Burlington. A middle child, I was kind of the mediator. Felt like I always had to be the one to try to keep the peace in the family. I would say that we were I thought of us as middle class, maybe upper middle class, because I remember getting to have Levi jeans instead of Wranglers. It was probably a $2 difference.
Wow.
But I remember that. And Converse tennis shoes instead of Keds. that'll date me. We, as family, we learned to work. We had chores on Saturday mornings. You couldn't go out to play or watch cartoons until you did your chores. And my sister and I washed the dishes and dried the dishes and put them away every single meal.
Nice.
So once I graduate then to mowing grass and shoveling driveways, then eventually I moved furniture for my dad, who had an Allied Van Lines company business. And in college, I had my CDL license, and I drove a semi on school breaks, moving furniture and freight around the country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's not on your,
different.
Is that on your bio?
No,
I don't know. Yeah. Wow. All right. Let's get into the big questions here. What is the role of government in economic development? And what are your views on TIF and other financial incentives for private and publicly traded businesses?
Well, the local government, the city government, has to be at the table on economic development. We have to make sure that the organizations that the city is working with and in some way supporting are doing a coordinated job and a good job. Having served on the Chamber of Commerce for a number of years, I certainly know that the economic development tools available to cities in Iowa are very, very limited. A TIF is about all that's available anymore. Mm-hmm. It's not the right, TIFs aren't right for every project. They certainly aren't. I was pleased that David Swenson, who's the Iowa State economist, who's kind of the expert on TIFs in Iowa, published his report less than 6 months ago, and he studied the use of TIFs by all of the larger communities in Iowa, and reported that Cedar Rapids had used TIFs appropriately, whereas some other communities had not. I think we need to remember that TIFs are an investment, and a lot of the TIFs were used after the flood, continued, but more after the flood. In the next few years, all those projects are going to come back on the tax rolls 100%, and we're going to get the benefit of that investment.
Yep.
So it's not always right. You have to look at each project, but it's something. It's the only opportunity we have sometimes to invest and get business to invest in our community.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on green spaces, and specifically, how do you plan to fund the Greenway plans already in place?
Well, if the question is really talking about along the river, those greenway spaces, they're part of the flood protection. They're, I think, intended to let the river breathe a little bit without causing damage to buildings. I'm certain it'll end up under the Parks Department, and it'll be part of the Parks Department budget. But it's really mowing, and a lot of those properties are being turned into prairie, so that there isn't maintenance, ongoing maintenance, which is smart. And prairie is perfect. I mean, I have prairie in my backyard.
Well, yeah. You get the biodiversity.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see, on the near northwest side, I'd love to see some soccer fields and a skate park.
Yeah.
If we could get more traffic to that area, it'll be easier to have the economic development we want along Ellis Boulevard. The reason we don't have as much now is there's not enough traffic over there yet. There aren't bodies over there now.
Yep.
This would be a great way to do it and to use that space.
Yep. Smart. And Nate Sherwood and Lindsay Posmack would love to hear the mayor mention a skate park.
My son's a skateboarder.
Be awesome. Yeah. What's your opinion of the traffic cameras?
Oh, boy. I have to say that I paid attention to where they were located. I never had a traffic speeding ticket for that. My son did one time when he was supposed to be at college. He was home. I really didn't have a problem with them. And you really had to be speeding to get a ticket. And at least the one on the S curve and on First Avenue at 10th, really do think there's a big safety issue there. And it's scary enough to have a police car sitting out there to clock people, but then he has to pull people over. So I think there's a big safety issue. I think the legislature and the courts, it seems like it's a local issue to me. And they should be left up to the local governments.
Yep. What are your views on sustainability in business, and should we incentivize businesses to be more accountable for their waste, whether it's solid waste or energy consumption?
Well, I think we're at least doing a lot more than we used to do as to the permeable paving and when new development happens. I'd like to think that businesses, if they knew how they could save on their waste and their energy, they would do it for their own savings. And so it might be more of an education. And maybe United Way a few years ago developed a workforce volunteer group, and they brought in people from businesses to come and say, here's the benefits of volunteering for your group, and here's how you can do it. Well, couldn't we get the landfill and we have a sustainability person now, Eric, get them to have some classes where they can teach businesses how they can save money themselves and save the environment. So I think that's a big part of it. But I also, again, think that if you teach people that their utility bills is going to go down, if they stop wasting electricity and utilities, they're going to do that automatically.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's great that we have Eric on board. I mean, we have a sustainability guy.
He is so passionate about his job. I love it.
It's excellent. All right. So hot topic here. Are you in favor of a casino in Cedar Rapids? If yes, why? And also, which one of the proposed plans do you support?
Well, if I had my druthers, we wouldn't have gambling in Iowa. I frankly think it's nuts that we have 16 or 17 casino licenses in the state of Iowa. But 61% of the people in the county voted to have a casino. I think the economic benefits of a casino outweigh the detriments. I don't think the harm is as great as it used to be. There are a lot of programs to help people who are gambling too much. I don't think the crime issue that they talk about has really ever surfaced in any of those other communities. And I do think there's some economic benefit. I doubt we're going to get it. I really doubt we're going to get it, which is another kind of sign of why Cedar Rapids isn't treated as the second largest city in the state. We do not get our fair share from the state and sometimes from the federal government, and we've got to figure out how to change that. As to which casino plan, wow. Well, I know the city has an agreement with Cedar Crossing because of all the effort they put into this, that they won't work with them. So I think there was some merit for that agreement at the time because they were having to spend a lot of time and money. Wild Rose developed a boutique casino because I think they thought that might be the only way to get a license, and I get that. So I don't think that my opinion is going to make any real difference. I hope we get a license and they give it to the best applicant that we have out there.
That's fair. How can we drive a stronger labor force? We've heard that it's impossible to find help at restaurants and just general labor.
Yeah, some people would say that's a good problem because people are employed. Our unemployment rate is really low, but when you need someone, it makes it difficult. I think we're in a much better position to retain and attract employees. I mean, with the amenities we have, with the redevelopment we have, it's a fun, kind of cool place to live and work now. The housing issue, and I think we'll have another question on that later, but that continues to be a bit of an issue here. We don't have all the housing options a city our size should have. When the Smolikoff's project gets redone and there are market rate apartments, efficiency apartments, I think those will fill up, and that will allow people to at least come and try to live in Cedar Rapids for a while. So I think that we're doing a lot of the right things to have the amenities that will attract people here, and then generally we just have to be this kind of engaged and welcoming community. Doesn't it bug you when you walk down the street and you're the only person on that block and the person walking doesn't look up and say hello? I don't get that.
Right.
I'm going to change that.
Right. Nice. Yes. I like it. Man, that's the best thing I've heard all day. It's true though. We have employees that can't can't live specifically anywhere in the downtown area.
Yeah.
It's So I'd love to have some emphasis on that. Yeah. Do you have any ideas to reduce the gang and gun violence in Cedar Rapids?
Well, yeah, I think it's shocking whenever we hear about a gun being fired at someone in Cedar Rapids. It's just startling, and I think the crime rate is still relatively low, but it's still too high when it happens. The community policing, I think, is really the right way to go, and stronger neighborhoods. We have to continue to develop strong neighborhood associations. I've been going to neighborhood association meetings, and each time there's someone from the police department there, and they have crime statistics for each of the neighborhoods, and a couple neighborhoods that don't have an association. The crime rates in the neighborhoods that have strong neighborhood associations are much lower than the ones, especially the two that don't have any kind of a neighborhood association. So we have to continue to build on that. And the community policing, so that people feel like the police are on their side and they get to know them. I'm told that the police department now gets calls from neighbors saying, that black four-door sedan is driving through the neighborhood again. Yep. Could you send somebody out? So it has to be a community effort. The police can't do it themselves. But when people call and have a concern, then we need to make sure that we're trying to address that concern.
Yeah. So, what plans do you have? This is interesting. So I think that schools are complex, man, I'm not sure that this is an easy answer, but what plans do you have to collaborate with the CR school district to increase student achievement and provide future-ready options for high school graduates?
Well, we clearly have to collaborate with the school district, especially now with their facilities plans to move some schools, consolidate some schools. Let's figure out if there's an effective and efficient way to use those schools, maybe double duty. Maybe we can somehow use one or more of those schools as a senior center. The city collaboration with Harrison, with the school district for Harrison School, where Harrison School is using the gym and the facilities at the Northwest Rec Center, is perfect. We have to make sure that we're looking at all those options for job ready. I would do what I could to push the internships and the job shadowing so that students recognize the pretty amazing opportunities that there are in Cedar Rapids. That they maybe, as most high school kids, I'm out of here when I graduate. But I think if we can give them an exposure to what's available here, they might stay, or they'll at least will consider coming back after college. And we also have to promote. We have a terrific trades program. We have incredible emphasis on our apprenticeship training programs, and those are high-paying jobs. And so we need to make sure that some kids they're not going to go to college, and they can have high-paying, challenging jobs. But I'm sure we stress that enough or promote that enough.
As a guy that didn't go to college and ended up being okay, I'm all for the alternative. There's a lot of ways you can get there, so that's great. So, all right, we've got about 10 minutes left. 3 questions. What work will you do towards creating and sustaining safe and healthy, affordable housing in Cedar Rapids?
Well, as I mentioned, we do not have all the housing options a city our size should have. I'm happy that there's at least discussion about affordable housing now, and the stigma that it's all Section 8 housing. It's not. That's a really small percentage of it. It's workforce housing. It's housing for single parents and young families. let's give them a decent place to live and to raise their family while they advance in their career. And then they can move out of the affordable housing and move into some other housing. It's better for the family. It's better for the kids. It's better for the families. It's better. It makes them better employees. If you're going home at night to a dump, it's probably hard to be the best parent and the best employee you can be. So we have to continue to do that. But we also need single-family housing construction. We don't have that in Cedar Rapids. When that young family says, I want a garage and a fenced yard, they leave our community. We have got to, the city's probably is going to have to make an investment to take some utilities out to probably the southwest, or where the city boundaries still go, and the Highway 100 extension now. We promoted that for so long because we were kind of landlocked. The school district was landlocked, and that's an opportunity for the school district to expand and go out that direction too. So I think the city's going to have to look hard and take some risk, but only when we know we have developers who are ready and willing and committed to putting in neighborhoods out where those utilities will be run. So eventually we get repaid for that because those houses come back on the tax rolls.
Sure. All right. So streets, they're a big issue. Our current plan for street repair, this is a little bit of a twist on the street dilemma. So we get a lot of complaints about the streets being closed down, being worked on. This question specifically addresses an issue about development, but our current plan for street repair doesn't address the large numbers of smaller residential streets within the next 10 years. This impacts resale values of homes, not to mention issues with transportation. What will you do to create a completely comprehensive streets plan for Cedar Rapids?
I will commit to looking at the plans that we have. Every 2 years, the DOT has the technology mounted on a van that has infrared cameras that will look at the substructure of a street and its surface, and they rate every street in the city on a scale of 1 to 100. And the city uses that information to prioritize projects. So I know some people will drive by a street that is relatively new and they're working on it. Say, well, wait a minute, my street's 100 years old. Well, that's because that study has shown if they do some maintenance work on this one, it won't get worse. And so there is a plan. Of course, it's not going to please everyone, and it has to continue to be tweaked when they do these studies. And every 2 years, the next 2 years, these streets that weren't on the list now are. So we have to reschedule those. The part of the problem, the road use tax formula that's been in place for the state of Iowa, where the state takes the gas tax that we all pay in, and they distribute it mainly to the rural areas. The urban areas have always been shortchanged. It's always been that way. That's why you have such beautiful farm-to-market roads that no one drives on. That's a tough ticket because we're still a rural, the legislature is still dominated by rural communities. So that's a hard thing to do. But another issue we're having is some of the newer streets that are being built in development, and then after they're developed, then they dedicate those to the city, and the city is responsible for them. I understand that a lot of those are failing really early, and they may or may not have been built according to the code at the time, but I know the city's talking about this, and it's an issue, and they're going to strengthen that code so that those streets last 40 and 50 years, which is what the intent was. But they have streets that the city's taking back after they've been in place for a couple of years, and in 8 years they're failing. And now it's the city's job to do that.
Man,
maybe nobody's fault, but we can fix that.
And I mean, from what I understand too, a lot of the roads, they just haven't been maintained for a long time.
Haven't had enough money to do it. And there's a big backlog. And the paving for progress, Penny. Ron Corbett would say the mistake they made was everybody thought once that we passed that penny that the roads would all be fixed, and that the backlog was way too great, and that most people wouldn't even recognize anything on their drive to and from work for 3 or 4 years. But now we've been out 3 or 4 years now. Now everybody should start to see some roads in town that have been improved.
Nice. Yeah. All right. So this is one of the big ones. Walk us through your first 100 days in office if you're elected.
Well, we could have 5 or 6 new council members, so a little of that time is going to be getting to know each other and understanding our roles. Having served on so many nonprofit boards, that's really the role. The council is supposed to set a budget, establish policy, and provide general oversight. That's what every nonprofit board is supposed to do. So I understand the role, but not everyone does understand that. So that'll take a little bit of time. The Iowa legislative session will just be starting. And so I'm certain that we'll have to be dealing with the legislature, in particular, the promise to backfill the commercial property tax cut they made a few years ago. Now they're talking about not doing that, and that would be devastating for Cedar Rapids and every community. So we'll be lobbying and pushing for them to keep the promise. I'm determined to establish a mayor's youth council and a mayor's senior council. I think there was a mayor's youth council 10 or 20 years ago. I forget which mayor, but I want to recruit some students who want to get involved, and maybe 4 to 6 times a year at least, we're going to get together on a regular time, and I'm going to listen to them, and they're going to give me their feedback. And I'd like to do the same with a group of seniors. It's just the way, it's a local government. And people, I hope they can grab me anytime they see me and talk to me, but this would be a little more structured. And hopefully their friends who aren't on the council would talk to them and say, well, talk to the mayor about this. So that's something I easily can get done in the first 100 days. I
like that. All right, last question here. And we have 3 minutes, so you can make it as long as you want within that. Why are you more qualified than the other candidates?
Well, I mentioned this to you earlier. Having to spend time talking about myself is not particularly comfortable. But in thinking about this, serving in this role, I really have tried to think about why I'm a good candidate for this. I'm a business lawyer, and so every single day, 1 or more, 10 sometimes, clients call, or a nonprofit I'm serving on, and there's an issue, and we need to figure out how to either get out of trouble, stay out of trouble, move something forward. And so as a lawyer, you have to think of the worst case scenario, the best case scenario, and come up with the most effective and efficient way to move something forward. So I'm an analytical problem solver, and I have to do that every day. I don't know that any other profession has to do that every day. So for 35 years, I've been working on that skill, and I think it'll serve me well. I've volunteered on average 1,000 hours a year for the last 20 years in this community. I've helped lead and chaired almost a dozen nonprofit organizations and causes. And so I think I have really strong leadership skills. I know how to lead. I know how to be collaborative. I know how to let people contribute and have their say, but also we have to make a decision at some point. You have to move it forward. And that volunteer work has given me, I think, a really strong and broad knowledge of the community, our strengths and weaknesses. A lot of that volunteer work was in the human services arena too, not just the Chamber of Commerce after the flood. So I understand that it's not just business, it's our citizens, it's our neighbors, it's our employees and our coworkers. So, and I love, like you, I love this community. It's my hometown. I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else, and this is, my wife and I talk, this is where we'll be buried. So I want to take that knowledge and the skill set I have, and instead of serving various nonprofits and the sectors, the people they serve, this gives me a chance to serve the entire community.
That's great. Well, this is going to be a good race. We have, thank you very much.
Good for you.
Yeah, no doubt. So I just got a few last words here for everybody watching. Mark your calendars. There's a bunch of forums, so just keep an eye out for all the forums. Specifically, October 12th, there's a candidate forum at the Cedar Rapids Library. And get out and vote, share this video, The election is on November 7th. We've got 8 candidates, and we need to make an informed choice. Thank you very much, and thank you, Brad Hart, for being here.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.